Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Ian the Reader. My name is Ian and I am Ian the Reader. Today, I have like so many books to talk to you guys about. Too many. I didn't mean for this to happen until I was almost there, and then I had to do it. So yeah, I read 31 books in 31 days in the month of July. Yeah, I never want to look at a book again. I never want to think about a book again. I don't even want to hear the word book again for like 5 seconds, and then I'll be ready to read again because I can't live without it. But yeah, I definitely read too many books in the month of July, and I'm feeling a little bit burnt out. I've had a very slow start to the month of August thus far, but I did it. I read a book a day in July, and I'm very proud of myself for having done it. It wasn't the plan. Obviously, just a little bit of backstory, I was participating in the Battle of the Bands readathon for July, hosted by Jake and Stacey over at the Bookish Drummer and the Chapter Conundrum, and I had to read 20 to 25 books for that, and by the time I had gotten to, like, 20-something books, it was like, I still had, like, a week and a half left when I was at, like, 24 books, and so I decided, you know what, I will never have another chance like this, I will never do this again to myself, probably until the next readathon, and so I decided to push myself to read 31 books in 31 days, and I freaking did it. So go me, I guess. I am exhausted, but let's talk about the books I read. So I obviously don't want this video to be 20 years long, so I have my handy-dandy laptop, and on it I have a 31-second timer that I will be utilizing. So I have 31 seconds to talk about each book. 31 seconds for 31 books in 31 days. It just feels right. It does. So, without any further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in the month of July. You're going to hear the obnoxious timer going as we continue this. So, be prepared for that. It will be loud. It will be obnoxious, just like me. And go. All right, so starting off in the month of July, I read Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is one of the books that Stacey chose for me to read in my Jake and Stacey Choose My TBR video, and I really liked this book. You can go ahead and watch my video with them to reveal my overall thoughts, but I thought this was a really good time, very short, had some interesting twists to the narrative on it that I didn't expect, and overall, I had a blast with it. It's probably like a 4.25 to 4.5 if I had to rate it now. I didn't even use my whole amount of time. Look at that. I want you to hear it, though. Listen. Here it comes. Isn't that terrible? Okay, cool. We're in business. Stop, please. Gosh. All right, number 2. Let's go. Timer started. All right, next I read The Wild Robot. I don't know the author. Peter Brown is the author. I read this book because it's being turned into a movie that looks really lovely, and I like the animation style for it. We follow a robot who is on a ship being transported with other robots, and the ship crashes, and the robot is the only one left over, and it has to learn to survive on this island, and it experiences a lot of changes to its personality as it does so. This was really heartwarming, and it was about like found family, and I really liked it. It wasn't like amazing, but I think it was a good time. It was a good time. All right, moving on. Stop! Oh my gosh! Okay, next we have Notes from the Midnight Driver by Jordan Sonnenblick. This is the first book I read that Jake chose for me to read from their choosing the TBR thing. I'm wasting time. Okay, this is a middle grade book that follows a young man who has made some poor decisions and now has to read to an older man at a hospital nursing care facility type place, and I thought it was pretty good. I liked the characters, I liked some of the story, I just wish it had gone a little bit further, maybe it had been aged up a little bit, so not my favorite Jordan Sonnenblick, but I did still moving on. Next, I read The Aier Academy, which is book 5 in the Series of Unfortunate Events series by Lemony Snicket. This was a reread for me, but I had a blast with it. It is one that I didn't really remember very well, and I think that there's a reason for that. It's not my favorite by any means. I think of the first 5 Series of Unfortunate Events books, it's probably my least favorite, but it does still have a lot of charm to it. There's just something about these books that is so ridiculous. Like, all the adults are freaking idiots, but it's such a good time. There's something about it that's so nostalgic to me. It's like the series that got me into reading. Next, I read A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I read this one after having not really known a whole lot about it. I knew that it was cozy, and that people really liked it. And I think that I just didn't really know what to expect from it. And I think because of that, I didn't really have a great time with it. I liked some of the ideas here. I liked the overall charm of the story, but it was just kind of forgettable to me. Like, even to this moment, I can't remember any of the characters' names or really what was going on with any of them. And I don't really plan on continuing this with the second book. Cool. Next up, we have Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I can't remember if I said that right, but yeah, this is such a weird little literary thriller, and I had a really good time with it. So we follow a woman who is kind of on the fringes of society, doesn't really have a whole lot of friends, and is just a bit peculiar. And she's working, I believe it's in a prison, I want to say, and a psychologist woman comes to work there as well, and this weird friendship, almost like obsession, starts to come up between the two of them, and the story takes some really interesting turns. I liked it. I'm just gonna say that. Dadgum, this 31 seconds goes by. Stop! Oh my god! Okay, we're gonna do this again. Here we go. Okay, so then I read book 1, I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells, and I read the entire 6-book series in this month. Did not expect to. Jake chose the first book for me to read, and then as soon as I told them what their scores were for that challenge, I binged the other 5 books in about like a week. These are so much fun. We follow a sociopathic young man who doesn't want to kill people but feels the tendency to, and there's some interesting twists in the story I didn't see coming. I had a blast with this though. I'll have a series review at some point soon. Did I do that in 31 seconds? I freaking did. So cool. But that accounts for, what, 6 books, because it was a 6-book series. So moving on, I don't know how many books we've talked about then. I'm just going to encompass all 6 of those together. Here are all of the images for the series, though. I had a really good time with these. That was more than 31 seconds, but it was 6 books, so I will allow it. Next up, I read Quaint Creatures, Mythical and Mundane by Andrew D. Meredith. I think I said that right. Is it Magical and Mundane? My apologies. This is really fun. It's about like a magical vet clinic almost, and it's very cozy. It was very short. I liked a lot of the characters here. They definitely had like some backstory that is kind of hinted at. I love when we follow characters that already have like a history and a lot of stuff they've done in their lives before, and we're kind of catching them later in life, and that's definitely what this felt like. I would love to read more books in this series. I do think he's planning on writing more. You should check this book out. Took a couple extra seconds. Stop. Okay, next up, I read Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Reckoner series, book 1 being Steelheart. I like this pretty well. I don't think I liked it as much as book one, but it wasn't bad by any means. I've been told that it was significantly worse than book 1, and I disagree with that. I think it was a pretty good time, and if you liked book 1, I don't see why you wouldn't like book 2. It definitely was a little bit different. We follow the character kind of leaving his area for the first time in his life, and there's some experiences with that. I had a good time though. I will be reading book 3 pretty soon. Next up, we have The Exile by Ryan Cahill. This is book 2.5 in the Bound and the Broken, and I gotta say, I had a blast with this. Before now, books 1 and 2 of this series I liked pretty well, but I didn't understand the hype. They're like super hyped here on BookTube as being like the indie fantasy series to read. I didn't get it before. I get it now. The Exile was fantastic. A 4.5-star read for me. It was like nonstop action, but some great characterization from characters I didn't care about before. It was a really good time. I highly recommend the series now, especially The Exile, and I can't wait to read book 3. Okay, next I read The Passengers by John Mars. This is the second book that I read from Stacey's books that she picked for me to read, and I really liked this book. So we follow a group of people who are trapped in self-driving cars, and they're set on a collision course, and society has to decide basically who lives and who dies. This was really cool. I loved that we get kind of this certain impression of all the people trapped in cars at the start, and the more we learn about them, our impressions of them change, kind of going back and forth. It really put you in the perspective of the characters you have to decide, as terrible as that is, but I had a really good time with this. This is so short. 31 seconds is not long. Okay, next up, Firestarter by Stephen King. I didn't like this book very much. Sorry, Jake. Yeah, this is a book that Jake chose for me to pick, and we all thought it was going to be like a surefire win. Surefire, that's really funny, because it's Firestarter. But it just did not work for me. I liked the first like third of it really well, and then the second and third thirds just did not work. And overall, it was my least favorite of the books that Jake and Stacey chose for me to read. I gave it 3 stars, and I stand by that. I will not be rereading this book at any point, so boo! All right, next up, is Fahrenheit 451, another fire book. I reread this for the readathon and for the Ray Bradbury book club going on in the Book of Strummer Discord. Link to the Discord down below so you can join us if you'd like to. We'll be reading the Martian Chronicles in August. This is the only Ray Bradbury book that I had yet read, and it is really incredible. I really think that Ray Bradbury was onto so many different things that were so ahead of his time. It is just absolutely brilliant. I do think that the narrative kind of struggles in the second half, but I did still really enjoy it a lot. So, yeah. Next, I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was another book that Stacey chose for me to read, her final book, and I liked this pretty well. My biggest complaint with this is that our main character, who is getting the story of Evelyn Hugo, is kind of pointless. Like, she really doesn't add very much to the story whatsoever, and I wanted more from her character, not just Evelyn's. Even though it is Evelyn's story, I wanted to care about the main character, quote unquote, the narrator, more than I did. So, a little bit bummed about that, but it was still really good. Okay, next up we have my first 5-star book, and probably my favorite book of the month, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I freaking loved this little short sci-fi novel. It's almost like a thriller as well. We follow a group of professionals as they enter into Area X, which is this really secluded and dangerous area, and they're going in there to be researchers, and a lot of crazy stuff happens. It is so weird and out there, but I was obsessed with it. The atmosphere, the thrills, the suspense, the mystery behind what is going on here. It was just so vivid. I loved it. I need to watch the movie. All right, moving on. Then I read Edge Dancer by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2.5 in the Stormlight Archive. This was a reread for me, and I liked it pretty well. Lift as a character is fine. I think she's kind of entertaining, but it's just such a sidestep from the main story and the momentum of the rest of the story. It definitely makes sense that this is its own thing rather than kind of being implemented into Oathbringer or Words of Radiance. But overall, I just don't really care about Lift's story as much. So I think it was fine. It was a fine reread. Nothing crazy. All right, next I read The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is book 3 of the what is Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. The Shadow of the Wind is one of my all-time favorite books, and as of now, I will say that it's going to be my favorite of that whole series. I've now read books 2 and 3, which are The Angel's Game and The Prisoner of Heaven. I think both of those have their own charm, but neither of them quite capture the magic of the first book, The Shadow of the Wind, which, again, is one of my all-time favorites. So I will read the 4th and the collection of short stories in this series, but I don't think I'll like them as much as I love Shadow of the Wind. All right, next up we have Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Man, this book did not vibe with me. I liked some of it. I liked the nostalgia aspects. I liked some of the characters. Other of the characters I did not like whatsoever. The main character I didn't like at all. I thought he was whiny and ridiculous and unkind and manipulative. And there were certain things about this that I just really did not vibe with. I wish that it had been more magical realism-y. This is one of Murakami's apparently novels that lacks magical realism when most of his do have it, and I would have liked it more if there was magical realism. I'll just say that, and I forgot to start the timer, so we're gonna stop there. I think it was about 31 seconds. Okay, next we have None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I really liked this. My wife and I listened to this audiobook on a road trip, and it was like crazy to listen to. There was something about it that was just absolutely compelling. We follow a woman who is being interviewed by her birthday twin, someone who was born on the same day in the same place as her, for a podcast, as the main character wants to like change her life, and it kind of goes back and forth, revealing her past and her present, her future, so many mysteries. It was amazing. I really liked None of This Is True. Then I read The Night Guest by Hildur Nutsdatter. I don't know how to say that. I'm really sorry. But yeah, this is a translated work, very short. It follows a woman who is sleepwalking and keeps waking up in the mornings with like blood on her hands and things. And it's alarming and weird, and it definitely went in some directions I didn't see coming. And the ending was a bit ambiguous for me, so I wasn't super crazy about that, but the rest of the story I found to be super compelling. I'll have a review out for this very soon. It comes out in September, I believe, so be prepared for that. Okay, then I read Iron and Magic by Alona Andrews. This is like book 9.5 in the Kate Daniels series. It's the start of a spin-off series, but it takes place between books 9 and 10. I've already read the main 10 books, so this was a little bit misplaced. I wish I'd read it before, but it didn't really impact the main story as much. It definitely deserves to be its own thing. It's definitely a bit more on the smutty side, which is not my taste typically. I did like the main character in the story that we choose to follow. He's kind of a villain in the main books, and it's kind of following him later on, but not my favorite Kate Daniels, but not the worst. Next up, we have my second 5-star book of the month, Orbiting Jupiter by Gary D. Schmidt. This is an amazing middle grade book that broke my heart. Like, I was emotionally distraught reading this. We follow a family that is fostering a young man named Joseph, and Joseph has been in the foster care system. He's had a really hard past, and he also has a daughter. He's 15 years old, and he's separated from his daughter, and it kind of follows that, but the main character actually is the son in this family that is fostering Joseph. It's about their friendship and brotherhood, and it's so emotional and powerful and amazing. Read it. I just hate this timer. Okay, next is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a really interesting mystery book that kind of pays homage to like classic like Agatha Christie type stories, but it's very much a twist on those. So I loved like the pairing of like originality with paying a tribute to the classics, but it is really interesting. It follows a family in this like ski resort, and there is a murder, but all of the members of this family have killed someone, as is revealed in the title, and you have to figure out who the heck killed this person. So yeah, really interesting story. Liked it a lot. Okay, next we have Worst Case Scenario by TJ Newman. I will have a review of this book in a ranking video of TJ Newman's books out in the next week or so, but just to save I'll save some of my thoughts for that video, but I will say I really did enjoy this. We follow really a lot of characters as this horrible scenario takes place of an airplane crashing into a power plant and the worldwide chaos that ensues. This book was kind of terrifying, to be honest, and I really, really enjoyed it. TJ Newman is such a stellar thriller writer. I will read anything she writes at this point. I've loved all of her books. So good. Okay, The Best Lies by David Ellis is the 30th book that I read in the month of July, and I'll have a review out for this shortly as well. It just came out at the end of July, and I liked this. I've read one other book by David Ellis, Look Closer, which was more of like a domestic thriller, a psychological thriller. This one definitely does have some psychological angles, but it does lean more into like crime thriller / like courtroom thriller. I still really enjoyed it. Definitely some crazy twists I didn't see coming. Secrets upon secrets. But if you like crime thrillers or legal thrillers, definitely check this out. And the 31st book that I read in the month of July, the final book I read, is one that I read throughout the month, but it was also a 5-star read for me, and that is Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock. This guy is incredible. He is an auto-buy author at this point. I only have one more book to read by him, which breaks my heart. But this is a collection of short stories, and it just like delves into the depravity of humanity. It is grimy, it is icky, it is terrible, it's beautiful at times, it is just stunning, the depiction of this small town and all of the characters in it. Donald Ray Pollock writes like nobody else, and I was horrified. I had to work up the courage to read this book throughout the month. Like, I'd have to put it down because each story was like a sucker punch. But really incredible, one of the best short story collections I've ever read, and screw this timer because Knock 'em Stiff is incredible. I will have a full video of my thoughts on Donald Ray Pollock's books once I have finished his final novel. I may read that in September. But dear God, that book came out in like 2016. Write another book, dude, please. Okay, that's it. I did it. That's 31 books in the month of July. Yeah, like I said, that was a little bit more brief than you might have thought because 6 of the books were in the main series, in one series, the John Cleaver series by Dan Wells, and I'll have a video separately for those, but we got through 6 books in 31 seconds there, so it was a little bit more brief than you might have at first thought, but I'm tired. I'm not gonna read today. I'm gonna play a video game or watch a movie, do something else, dear God, because there's more to life than books, allegedly. But yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in July. And, you know, don't ever feel like you have to read this much because you don't. I wish I hadn't in some ways because, like I said, it was just like constant audiobooks all day, every day for the month of July. And that was in the midst of, I also took a vacation and it was my birthday, so I really crammed in some books. But yeah, I will say these are my 3 favorite books of the month. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock, and Orbiting Jupiter by Gary D. Schmidt. 5 stars for each of these. Highly recommend them. And like I said, let me know what your favorite books were for the month of July in the comments. I'm gonna go take a nap. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.